Whether you're an IT professional, a tech enthusiast, or couldn't care less about technology, I'm here to let you know that if you want to retain power over your life, it is necessary for you to have an understanding of technology. Now, this claim doesn't come without justification, so I'm going to be going through a series of points as to why this is the case. So, the first point is that everyone is becoming increasingly dependent on technology for their daily lives. You can't even apply for a job or travel somewhere new without using technology. I mean, just imagine for a moment. What would happen if all of your technology just disappeared overnight? You'd lose outside contact with most of the world. If you needed to research something, you'd have a difficult time with that because most people, they don't even have books in their house anymore. What would you do? So that's just to highlight the point of an increasing dependency on technology that everyone is dealing with. Now, and it's not necessarily wrong to rely on tools. You're always going to be reliant on external tools, but it's very important. If you want to understand the relationship between your use of technology and power, it's important to understand what it means to really be dependent on something. So, with dependencies, whenever someone forms a dependency, what a dependency really is it's a habit of doing something one particular way. So most people, for instance, they're using, if you're watching this video right now, if you're not watching this on your phone, you're probably using Windows. Or if you needed to do something on a computer or a laptop, you're probably using the Windows operating system. Why is that? Well, I'll tell you why it is. The reason why you're using the Windows operating system is because Microsoft decided to do licensing deals with basically every computer manufacturer on the planet, so that Windows basically comes pre-installed on every computer. Why did they do that? Well, the reason they did that is because users they didn't want to go through the process of manually installing operating systems like they did in the late 1990s and the early 2000s. They didn't like it. They didn't like to have to go, even with the whole wizard process. I mean, now they're still a wizard, but they didn't want to have to go through the process of setting up their own operating system. And that would include, that's why they might not try another operating system like Linux, for example. Most people probably don't even know that Linux exists. I sure didn't know it existed up until about 2 years ago. And then that goes with just about, that doesn't just go for Windows. That goes for really any software. That also goes for Microsoft Word as a word processor. Did you know that there are other word processors out there that you could use? There's all kinds of alternatives to software that people become dependent on. And so, these dependencies are really just habits of use. So what's the price that you pay for that? Well, the price that you pay for that is you're basically beholden to the design of the designers of the softwares and technologies. So let's say that Microsoft, they decide to include something in their operating system that if you knew about, you'd be unhappy. Well, you don't get a choice. Well, you do have a choice in the matter, but if you're not willing to confront your habits and consider alternatives, you basically have to live with it. You're basically a slave to Microsoft's operating system insofar as you're dependent on their operating system to carry out your daily life. And that goes with all the technology and software that you're utilizing. Every aspect of your life that is touched by a particular piece of software is, the amount of power, I should say, that a particular piece of technology has can be measured more or less in proportion to the number of things in your life that it touches. And so that's why I think most people who, anytime that controversial software is discussed, it's interesting because you always hear that it's always a war between operating systems, like Linux versus Windows, for instance. Why is that? Well, that's because it's the overarching software that you're using on your system. So, like for instance, a lot of people are interested in privacy nowadays. So guess what they do? They install something like the Brave browser, or they use a VPN. Except you're using the Windows operating system. So if you're using the software to protect your data, but you're using the Windows operating system, it doesn't actually matter because Microsoft is just going to keep collecting your data anyways. See, that's the thing. It's okay to be reliant on technologies. However, if you also want to retain your power in the meantime, you want to retain your privacy, you want to retain all these things, your freedoms, and your privacy, and you don't want to be spied on, well, then it's also important to have an understanding of all of the technology that you're using. That way, you can seek out alternatives. If Microsoft or whomever decides to implement something that you don't like, it's against your values, you at least know that there's alternatives out there. You're not just a slave. Now that's basically a quick summation of what I wanted to go into, but I'm going to be going into this in a lot more detail with very specific instances in other videos. So if you want to hear that, subscribe to my channel, stay in tune. All right, take care.